Hi, I'm Mike McLean. Welcome to the Short Circuit podcast brought to you by Swift Aircraft. In this series, we'll be chatting with a variety of people from all walks of life, but who all have one thing in common: aviation. We'll discuss how and why they got into aviation, what or who inspired them, and what they would say to encourage young people to get involved. Flight fascinates many of us, and our guests will explain why they are compelled to look to the sky. Today's chat is with Steph Smith. Steph is a B1 licensed aircraft engineer for Airbus and a STEM ambassador. She gives us a peek behind the scenes into her work and her own history, including looking at novel ways to do her job, what STEM means to her, and a surprising accidental purchase. But before we kick off, I have a quick request. Please remember to click the like button, share with friends and colleagues, and subscribe. This really does help us do this podcast. So with that in mind, here goes. Okay, good afternoon, Steph Smith. Question number one, and that is, who are you and what is your current role in aviation?
So, as you've introduced, my name is Steph. I am a licensed aircraft engineer of the B1 variety. So that means I do mechanical, airframes, engines, systems, very basic electrics. Currently working for Airbus, maintaining the A400M at RAF Brize Norton. So I'm embedded into 70 Squadron as one of their civilian contractors, helping to keep the aircraft running and looking after them on a day-to-day basis so that the squadron can deploy around the world to continue their taskings.
Excellent. I am instantly impressed. It's the A400M, where I live's occasional low-flying area, and I've watched them come past over the last few years as they've built up to replace the C-130s when they come up the estuary at 200 feet or whatever. They're quite an impressive aircraft, and they've got
You certainly hear them coming.
yeah, they've got a distinctive noise. I was surprised by that because I thought they were going to be a little bit, quieter and a bit more stealthy, but not. They scream as they come at you. So I put it down to the contra rotating props, which is they're not in the same shaft, but it's a very unusual layout with engines on the same wing rotating in different directions. That's quite unusual.
It certainly seems to work, though, and a lot of the tests we do when we're testing the engines, you have to sort of check whether they've been kept synchrophased and if the vibrations are working with each other through the contra rotations. And it seems to work quite well. It very rarely causes an issue.
Yeah. Enough about me showing off what I know about the A400M, because that's it. That's as much as I know. So moving swiftly on. Okay, so we got to question two then, and that is, how did you get started in aviation? What got you looking upwards to the skies?
So I grew up in Essex, and my family used to take me to Southend Air Show, where you sort of stand along the beach and watch them fly over the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a lot of time at the Imperial War Museum at Duxford, as it wasn't far from home. So there'd be a lot of days where my dad would take me around the hangars, or the family would go to the air shows. I might have scratched the top of several of my dad's cars when he put me out the top of the sunroof to watch the air show, and I drove all my little model aircraft over the roof of his Scorpios and Granadas. And it has somewhat sort of escalated from that. When I was 10, my dad had a trial flight and a glider bought for him by my mum as a birthday present. And you do that thing that you do when you're a kid. I sat there and went, oh my God, that looks amazing. And next thing you know, you've got a parachute on, you're strapped in. And I had my first glider flight, age 10. Had an
Wow.
800-foot cable break with the loudest bang imaginable, and still absolutely loved it. And it just carried on from there. Every weekend, every school holiday, I was at the airfield doing chores to cover some of the costs of flying, making the most of like the junior rates they put in place meant flying was sort of half price.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up getting a paper round, and my paper round equivalent 3 winch launches a week. So it meant I could keep flying every weekend just by getting up at 6 in the morning before school to throw papers through people's door. So that's now 25 years I've been flying gliders on and off took a break for university because trying to get through a degree in aircraft engineering was incredibly time consuming. We were studying a lot longer than some of the other courses, so free time meant flying had to take a back seat.
Hmm.
And during COVID, obviously, we couldn't really go anywhere or spend any money. I ended up with enough saved that I could actually start my PPL training in 2020. So we've gone from, £5 winch launches to £175 an hour to fly a PA-28, and
Right.
finished my PPL and was like, what else can I do? So I've always loved vintage tail dragger aeroplanes. So I'll do a tail wheel conversion, go back to Duxford, back to my roots, flew a Cub there, got the tail wheel done, and then accidentally bought an aeroplane 8 weeks later
Ah.
at a car show of all places. So it was a scramble at Bicester, and they let aircraft fly in as part of the show to sort of attract some attention to some of the aviation heritage.
Hmm.
And walking along the flight line, it was, well, that one's for sale, that one's for sale, that one's for sale. And the airfield manager came over and went, when you find the one you like, let me know and we'll call the pilot for you. And I found my rear wing Sky Ranger and instantly fell in love with her. She's built in 1940. She's a vintage tail dragger and just looks incredible.
Well, I need to do, like I said, I need to do my homework and check her out because yeah, it's not a type that I know, so I have to confess this. I'm intrigued now, so I need to do some homework. So, I mean, when you say your dad took you to the shows and stuff, going back to that, was he in the military or was he in aviation or was it just a thing for him, just a pastime?
Well, he was actually a banker, and then he worked for a bank, and then he was working for the job centre for many decades.
Hmm.
But before I was born, he was part of the TA as a paratrooper. So he had thrown himself out of Hercules, hot air balloons, had all sorts of horrendous incidents that have put me off ever having to pull a parachute. But he'd never actually flown, not until my mum bought him the trial lesson. So sort of our aviation journey is actually learning to fly started on the same day.
Right,
So
okay.
it was quite nice to sort of have that journey together. I mean, he got there a lot faster than I was, as legally at the time I had to be 16 before I could go solo.
Hmm.
Whereas for him, it was only a few months because obviously he was considerably older. But it meant we had an extra bond because he then bought a glider, which when I came of age, I'd helped look after and sort of rig and get him around. That he then gave me the opportunity to fly. And when he passed away in 2017, I inherited her.
All
So
right,
I've
okay.
now got the glider as a project and a nice memory for him or of him. So I've put a little decal in there in memory of dad, and it's just nice that you feel that when you take her flying, that you've just got that little bit of him with you
Hmm.
to continue the journey.
Oh, that's a lovely story. I mean, that's great. So, so the aviation side wasn't like it wasn't a generational thing that had always been in the family, but it was a family support, a mutual support thing. Because one of the things that's come out in a lot of these conversations for people getting into aviation, it's been about somebody getting some support within the family, or a nudge, or a bit of encouragement, or it's been there previously. So you're looking after the A400s, which for those people who don't know is a large military transport aircraft.
Yep, it is. Yes.
It's a bit of a biggie, and it's also very new. So the next question normally is, so what developments or innovations do you see coming over the horizon, within your working life? What do you think is going to be the next big thing? But we can maybe modify that a little bit because since you are literally at the cutting edge with transport, bearing in mind what you can and can't talk about. So what have you seen that is relevant and you are able to discuss and has impressed you? What innovations do what made you go, that's clever?
I mean, to be quite honest, I was quite impressed when they first brought out the A400M because they've had to make it so adaptable to working in different environments.
Hmm.
And it was just something as simple as the landing gear. It can put itself each leg at different levels to be on uneven ground to keep the aircraft level so they can load and unload everything effectively.
Wow.
And that may seem like a very basic thing, but the fact that each leg can be operated separately to adjust the height, it's an incredibly basic thing that just makes everything so much easier for everybody involved. Like if you land it on a desert strip somewhere or an unmade path, you can make it like it's not an issue at all, like it's parked on concrete.
All right. So you can tilt it side to side. Because I know on some
Yeah, and
aircraft they
and
can kneel down. So like the C5 and I think the Hercules could kneel down. But
yeah, so it is called kneeling, but each of the six legs can be knelt separately into a different amount. So it's quite
wow.
interesting to see doing that.
Again, something I didn't know. So I've learned something. This is all good. This is all good.
I mean,
So,
I'm also fascinated by the sustainable aviation fuels because that was my dissertation when I was at university.
all
So at the
right.
time I was working for British Airways and it was their big thing.
Mhm.
So it was reaching out to all the companies across the globe to find out all the different ways they were looking at producing it with algae, biomass, and they were just starting to touch on hydrogen technologies. So following that for the last 10 years has been quite incredible to watch, especially now you can see Cranfield flying their converted Islander
Mhm.
with the engine run by hydrogen. It's quite incredible to sort of see the developments that have come along so quickly.
Yeah, with the Air Force announcing, I think it was during COVID that they were going to go zero emissions at point of use. I think, and there's a charge for net zero by 2040. I think it is with the Air Force. So with sustainable air fuel, sustainable, yeah, aviation fuels, it's yeah, you're right again, right at the cutting edge of all of this. So, something I must say then, if you're looking at alternate power sources and so on, I'm giving you now an open invitation to come and visit us at Swift Aircraft and have a look at our development phase for our two-seater trainer aircraft, which will have options of electrical power powered by a variety of sources, which are still under development at the moment. So I'm sure if you're ever over in East Anglia, come see us. That'd be, I think you'd be interested.
Oh, that'd be great. I mean, my family are over that way, so
All right. Okay, that's a deal. That's a deal. We'll see
brilliant.
you there. Okay, so anything else exciting that you see on the horizon that you think you'll be working on in the next few years?
I believe we may end up using drones to support some maintenance work. I mean, you've seen companies like EasyJet have been using drones, flying them in the hangar to sort of access parts of the aircraft that aren't easy to get to by sort of climbing and clambering over. And they've been using the drones to sort of scan the tops of the fuselages, go up the tails, and just give you sort of views on walk rounds that you just wouldn't see day to day from the ground. I mean, with the A400M, we climb out of the escape hatch and walk along the top of the aircraft.
Mhm.
But even then, there's still only a limited area that you can sort of safely walk, and you could quite easily miss something. But with a drone, if you're recording the footage, you can go back, stop, zoom in, fly it back over and sort of take a little bit more time to go over the detail.
Wow. Again, it's something I'd never thought about, but yeah, because there's a famous picture that floats around on social media of a couple of airmen or ground crew on the top of the T-tail on the C5, which just looks huge. And it's not until I think about that, is that how do you inspect the top of an A400? You know, if there's any damage to the top surface of the tail, you're not going to see it from the ground.
No,
So something as simple as using a drone just to give you a set of eyes into inaccessible areas. I mean, one, health and safety, not having to climb up ladders and scaffolding and whatever. It's quicker, it's cheaper, clever thinking. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
like that.
it will require a bit of extra training, obviously, because flying a drone around an aircraft, you're just giving the chance of having more impact damage, but
Yeah, yeah.
it will be sort of working the processes to make that work. But a drone would cause a lot less damage than, say, one of us trying to drive a scissor lift up to the aircraft and hitting the side of the aircraft with that. So it should balance itself off with time and training.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. I like that. Now, I read somewhere, yes, yes. So you are also a STEM ambassador.
I am indeed.
And likewise, we need to get a special handshake or signal or something, so we can recognize each other as we're moving around. So, can you tell me a bit about your involvement with STEM? One, why you got into it, and secondly, what you do, and thirdly, why you think it's worthwhile.
Okay, well, starting with question one, I became a STEM ambassador just to sort of give. I feel young people they don't feel they can identify with something unless they can see somebody. So when I was at school, we had these horrendous careers quizzes where you tick, please enter your age, are you male or female? And if you tick the female box, loads of jobs would disappear.
Hmm.
So you couldn't be a doctor, you couldn't be a pilot, you couldn't be an engineer, but it would tell you that you could be a nurse, you could be cabin crew, you could be a hairdresser or a teacher or a secretary. And okay, it worked conversely for the boys. They then lost access to being hairdressers and nurses when they ticked male. And I found that really depressing because the only things I actually wanted to do was go fly airplanes and pull things apart.
Hmm.
And it just became such a problem. I mean, some of my friends now, the best hairdressers and nurses I know are men.
Right.
And if we'd all have followed the advice we got at school, none of us would be doing what we do and love now. And it's just trying to make sure that this bias doesn't sort of go forward with future generations.
Hmm.
So if we can show young children that people of all genders, ages, and skin colours can do whatever job they want,
Hmm.
and it's just sort of getting out there and introducing people to things they couldn't believe. And I mean, even the EasyJet study that they've just released, 52% of children thought that pilots were a male job. So there's still a lot of work to do.
Uh, it makes you wonder how. I mean, I'm significantly older than you, and yeah, in dinosaur times, it was, yeah, it was. No, girls can't do that. And I was talking to another guest just the other day, and we were talking about women in aviation, and women have been in aviation since the beginning. There's Amy Johnson, there's Amelia Earhart, and but I'm waffling. Anyway, carry on.
So my involvement with STEM days, I've done obviously during COVID, did a lot of online talks like this where you'd be projected into classrooms,
Mm.
talking to children from the age of 5 up to 18. So I tailor my talk to sort of give them an idea of who I am, how I got into aviation, talk them through my different roles, and just give them an idea that although I may have gone to university and got a degree because that was the route that worked best for me, that you don't need a degree. There are other options to get into aviation. There's lots of apprenticeships out there now, fully funded programs. And it was just to give them the idea that you don't have to go and work for the military. You don't have to go and work for an airline. There are plenty of companies out there, such as yourselves, doing general aviation, small training aircraft. There's gliding, you can get into helicopters, you can do business jets. And there's a growing warbird maintenance community now as well. So it's just sort of giving people an idea of what else is out there if you look.
Mhm.
And then obviously now we can get out and do events face to face. I've been supporting some of the Soaring to Success days and the Air League days where they've been taking children from more underprivileged backgrounds to flying clubs around the country and actually taking them up for a trial lesson in a powered aircraft.
Mhm.
And it's just been sort of seeing their reactions of how they felt before they went, getting them to fly a simulator, showing them round the airfield where they're all really excited looking at helicopters and big shiny aeroplanes. And then to see their faces when they get out of their trial lessons, it's just been the grins and the cheering and the dancing, and they've all just wanted to take photos and celebrate. And that's what makes it feel like this is all worth it.
Mhm.
You take them
Yep.
somewhere like that and expose them to something new. And if just one of them out of each group goes, I think I could learn to fly, or I want to go and fix that, that would be brilliant.
Mhm. Yep. It does make it all worthwhile.
Definitely, that's part of why I like getting involved. I like getting out to the events and being on the stand.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I volunteer for the Royal Aeronautical Society. I do some of the Air League events, and I do a lot with the British Women Pilots Association, where we will put stands up at careers events, air shows, aviation events, and it's just to try and sort of catch people in passing. We'll stop everybody and anybody that's interested. We did Aero Expo last year, and
Mhm.
it was people that were stopping, and even if they weren't interested for themselves, there were lots of fathers that were like, "Can I take some information to give to my daughter, my niece, my granddaughter?" Just supporting friends and family members,
Mhm.
and it's just sort of building the network and community to get support across the board.
So STEM is something that you got involved with because you were just enthusiastic. You wanted to pay it forwards. I think it's good. It's exciting. For me, it's very satisfying to see that this is happening and that we are getting to talk to people like yourselves because it helps spread the word. One question that did pop into my mind, which you haven't mentioned them, so I'm guessing the answer is no. But were you ever a member of the cadet force?
I had looked into the air cadets, but by the time I had sort of got to know about them, I was already flying gliders
Right.
and had somewhat sort of exceeded where they could have taken me with my gliding. So it just wasn't a necessary thing for me at the time.
Hmm. Hmm. So, can you tell us a bit more then about your activities down at Bry's and what you're doing with these big beasts that you're wrangling that down there?
Oh, well, there are no 2 days that ever look quite the same. So you never know what you're walking into when your shift starts. We're 24/7. We work 365 days of the year. So we're still covering bank holidays, Christmas, New Year. When everybody else is off at home, we're still there just in
Hmm.
case. So we do all sorts from, just your walk around your daily check where you're checking the tires, checking the oil, making sure everything's functioning. And it can be your day can be the crew have taken it flying, they've landed on a beach and the debris trashed a couple of the tires, so you'd replace some wheels. It could be a simple day like that, or you can have a day where you've got a fault where, regardless of what codes the computer gives you, you follow the manual and you replace all the parts and it still doesn't work.
Hmm.
So sometimes it just requires that little bit of out of the box thinking and sort of calling upon all your skills and experiences from the past to try and come up with a way of working around what you've done and drawing on your colleagues' experiences and knowledge as well. I mean, we're a very sociable team. We're always happy to sort of share our knowledge with one another, and you can quite easily send a message or call somebody and be like, I really need your help. Can
Hmm.
you hop along? This is what we've got. Not quite sure where we're going.
Well, that's a key
And
word you
then,
used there was the word team, and I think that's one thing in aviation that again it's a recurring theme that there's very little in aviation that you can do that is completely solo. I mean, everybody talks about, oh well, you could fly solo, but to get that person in the air, even in GA, it's very rare that it's done completely just one person. You've got to have somebody else, even if it's just keeping a wingtip off the ground with a glider, or running the winch with the glider, or whether it's getting a tow from another aircraft, or an engineer to service your engine, or whatever it is. There's very little scope really to do everything all on your own.
and of
So
course, lone working isn't advised either, because if you have an accident, there's going to be nobody there
yeah,
to look out for you or to get help.
yeah. So I mean, is this something that you stress when you're doing your STEM stuff? Is the no I in team line, does that come up often?
I do try not to use cliches like that, but I do try and build the aviation as a community. And regardless of what you're doing, you do need other people around you. You need those people to fall back on and to help you. Really, it's not just teamwork. It's more trying to push out that communication is the biggest skill that you need in aviation. Because if you don't communicate, it's dangerous, it's lonely, and it's just not going to work.
Hmm. Yes, yes. That's communication. It's a skill in its own, and it's something that should be learned very early on and encouraged, I think. It's
Yeah, and the ability to speak out. I mean, the biggest thing with aviation is having that moment to turn around and say, "Hang on a minute, stop. This isn't working. We're following the process, but it's not working, or the weather conditions aren't safe." Because obviously we work outside in all weather, and we could be tasked with a job that requires you to be on top of the aircraft. And we were asked to do a job last week, and it was pouring with rain and really windy, and they wanted us to get on top of the aircraft and take a large panel off to do a job. And I had to turn around and say, no, we really can't do that. It's not safe. One, the panel's going to come off. And although we are harnessed and strapped to the top of the aircraft, it's going to be slippery.
Mhm.
So I called an end to the job and said, you're going to have to get us some indoor space or wait for the weather to improve.
Yeah.
And
You
it's
don't.
it's just having the confidence to say that. And if somebody tries to fight back at that, just say, no, it's my license, my stamp, my team. I've got to look out for their welfare as well as mine. I won't ask anybody to do a job that I wouldn't be happy to go and do myself.
Mhm. Here, here, as they say. It's like one of the phrases from mountaineering: if you see something wrong, do something about it, say something about it. And you have to have that level of confidence to be able to go to somebody who is of senior rank in whatever way you want to look at that, whether they earn more money, or whether it's a structured place that you're working, or whether it's the boss of the company, or whoever it is. It's a safety critical thing. And if you can go up to them and say, no, you can't do that because you don't want to sit there and say, I don't want to say it, and then somebody dies, because that's something awful to live with. So
Yeah.
it's a
Which is why in
communication.
gliding, everybody is encouraged to yell stop if they see something unsafe with a launch.
Hmm.
Anybody at the launch point can yell stop. And that's it. Everybody drops it. The cable disconnects, the aircraft stops, the wing goes down, and you reset and you sit there and go, right, what happened there? What was wrong?
Hmm.
And there's a dynamic risk assessment that goes on. And that's all it takes.
Yeah,
Just a little bit of common sense and, constantly assessing the changing situations.
yeah. And again, that's something that should translate not just into aviation. That should be across the board in any industry, in any career that you're working in. You should be able to have that level of communication and trust. So now we've sorted out all of that, and we're coming to the big question of the day. Okay, and that is, what is your favorite airplane and why?
So I've put a lot of thought into this one, and I think I've narrowed it down to three.
Okay.
So if we're going to go with all-time ever favorite aeroplane, it would have to be the B2 because that was one of the first airfix kits I ever built. It hung from my bedroom ceiling for many, many years, and it just fascinated me, just the sheer size of it and the shape and how something that large managed to evade sort of everybody's reconnaissance and they couldn't, like the stealth technology on it just fascinated me. And with there being so few of them, up until about 18 months ago, I'd never actually seen one fly.
Hmm.
And it was a summer day, and I'd gone outside at work for lunch. And unbeknown to me, the B2s were actually down the road at Fairford because the Americans had brought a few of them over. And I'm sat there quite happily having my sandwich and a coffee in the sunshine. And next thing you know, a B2 comes out the cloud above me. And I just sat there in absolute awe. And everybody in our office was looking at me like, what's wrong with her? Like, she's just staring at the sky with her mouth wide open. And my husband rang me from the second floor of the building going, what on earth have you seen? What are you doing, you strange person? And it's like, look out your window, look up. There is a giant black B2 coming out of a cloud. And he was like, okay, I get it. Right. I'm coming out to come and see it as well. It's just, it's something that the novelty of working somewhere like Bryce hasn't worn off yet because you never know what's actually going to be there of a day-to-day
Hmm.
basis.
Yep.
The aircraft that come in around all the air shows or the foreign aircraft that visit. I mean, we were at work the other week and a U2 came over really low. And it was just one of those things, it's like, I would never have seen this while I worked at Heathrow. Like, the most exciting thing that happened at Heathrow was the red arrows would fly over.
Hmm.
So I guess I'm just glad that I've still got that childish joy of my job that seeing something like a B2 or even the B-52s when they come and smoke the runway, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then if I can pick a second favourite one, the favourite aircraft I've ever flown would have to be a Tiger Moth. I mean, it's been a lifelong dream to go and fly a Tiger Moth, and I didn't think it would ever be something I could do. I'm now a solo Tiger Moth pilot looking to finish my conversion so I can share this with other people and take some of my friends flying that have always wanted to fly Tiger Moths and hopefully get my granddad up in one because he's never had the chance to fly him on either. And at 93, I'm hoping he holds out for me to take him on that.
You better get it done then. Better get it done.
Yes.
Okay, and what's your third one?
The Vulcan. And that sort of rings back to my dad. He sort of brought me up with a love of just the sheer noise of the Vulcan. And I mean, he was terrified of them as a child. They lived near where they used to scramble, and
Mm,
apparently he used to hide under the dining table whenever they took off.
very effective.
But our glider carries 558 as its number because my dad loved XH558. So when he passed, we actually had his name inscribed under the wing as one
All
of the
right.
memorial plaques for him. But it's just one of those aircraft. I mean, we went and saw the final flight when it did its tour around the UK, and to just be stood on the grass at Holton and watch it come over low level. Again, it's just the sheer size and volume of the thing, and the fact that they've been going for so many years flying on that old technology.
Mm, yeah.
And it literally just shook every part of your insides with just the vibrations and the noise.
One of my earliest recollections is watching a Vulcan do aerobatics off the coast of Skegness, and I can feel it now. To this day, I can feel my insides turn to jelly just thinking about it. Uh, that is something that will stick with me. That is something that will stick with me. Okay, I'm going to push you because
It's
we're
just a
running out of
shame that no
time.
one's going to know that now.
No, no, it's
Very
yeah, yeah. Anyway, we're not here about nostalgia. So come on, I'm going to push you for one. You have to choose one, and we're running out of time. So give me one of those three, and what's going to go on the wall on our virtual hanger wall.
I'll keep the B2, please, as I can have the Tiger Moth any day. So I'll have the B2.
We've got with the B2. Well, I can tell you, it's the first B2 that's been selected so far. So anyway, right, we're getting to the end now, so we're going to get thrown off the system. So I've got to say thank you very much for coming on board today. The time has flown by. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to talk to somebody who gets that close to these. I mean, have they got a nickname yet? Because the C-130s, they were Fat Alberts and whatever. So what have the A400s got a nickname, which I don't know about yet?
Well, they are referred to as the Atlas. They did originally try and call them the Grizzly, but it wasn't deemed the preferred name for them, so it now just seems to be Atlas.
Yeah, Atlas. But anyway, so from talking to an Atlas engineer, a STEM ambassador with the secret handshake, Stephanie, it's been great talking to you. Thank you very much for all your time, and we'll be in touch sometime in the not too distant future.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me.
So that was Steph Smith. Upbeat, enthusiastic, positive. All these are fitting adjectives. It's obvious that she loves her job and is smitten with anything that flies. Yet again, the subject of volunteering at a flying club comes up as a gateway into the industry, and the urge to pass on that love of aviation to the next generation has once more resulted in a committed STEM provider. So we say thanks to Steph for her hashtag inspiring aviation, and for helping our Atlases support our global reach. Fly safe. You have been listening to The Short Circuit, presented by Mike McLean and sponsored by Swift Aircraft with the hashtag Inspiring Aviation. This has been a Zoom Spike production.